Welcome to Cedar Park United Church. Tonight, May 1st, with the rising of the flower moon, we are kicking off a month of nature connections in our neighborhood. Together as neighbors, we'll discover just what maybe we can make a difference after all. Cette présentation marque le coup d'envoi de la pleine lune des fleurs et de mois consacré aux connexions avec la nature dans notre quartier. Ensemble, en tant que nos voisins et voisines, nous découvrirons que, mais oui, je peux faire une différence. So along with Go Habs Go, we're going to imitate the Canadians tonight and say, go nature go. With our first event of Nature Connections, we are pleased to present Kim Dooley and Kyra Pompeo. Kim Dooley is a Pointe-Claire gardener with a particular passion for native plants. For the past 25 years, her love of the creatures in her garden has driven her to create what she hopes is a sanctuary for wildlife. With diligent research, persistent trial and error, and a hefty dose of good luck, the garden came alive. Kim enjoys sharing what she has learned with others and encouraging them to create their own sanctuaries for themselves and the wildlife around them. It is her belief that at this time, the world desperately needs gardeners and that we can help save the earth by working in concert with her. Kyra Pompeo is the junior manager at the City of Pointe-Claire in Sustainable Development and Ecological Transition Department. She started in 2024 as an intern at the city, and she has been working for Pointe-Claire for 2 years. She has a bachelor's in environmental science and a master's in environmental impact assessment. We welcome Kim and Kyra.
Can everybody hear me? Is that working? Yes, this is my first time wearing something like this, so if something goes wrong, please make me aware of it. And this one's turned off, is that right? Oh, just push it over, okay. You don't want to hear too much of me, really. Thank you for inviting me here to talk today. My journey to a biodiverse garden began about 25 years ago and has brought me many discoveries and honestly induced much awe. It has offered me a path forward in a world coping with climate crisis. In this talk, I want to share my garden with you and encourage you to consider how you can create places of sanctuary for nature. But first, I would like to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we gather on the traditional unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, the Mohawk Nation. T'aut'ihaka, Montreal, has long served as a gathering place for many First Nations, and we recognize the Kanien'kehá:ka as the custodians of these lands and waters. We are committed to honoring Indigenous knowledge, voices, and perspectives as we work towards a more just and equitable future for all. The photo on the screen might look familiar to you. It was taken last month by NASA astronaut Reid Wise aboard the spaceship Artemis II. I love looking at it. It reminds me that the planet we share is so fragile and precious and alone, and that there are actions, collective and individual, small and large, that we can take together to address climate change. The challenge is great, but as with so many challenges, so are the opportunities. For me, every gardening season begins with hope. In the garden, I love looking for metaphors, ideas that cross barriers and reveal a truth that transcends the subject matter. I am particularly fond of the metaphor of planting a seed, of starting something small, and of quiet beginnings. It causes me to reflect on the time, care, and nurturing required to grow anything, a project, a seed, a whole garden, into something significant and of value to the world. Henry David Thoreau said, "Though I do not believe that a plant will spring up where no seed has been, I have great faith in a seed. Convince me that you have a seed there, and I am prepared to expect wonders." With its ongoing project, Cedar Park United has planted that seed in what I detect is very fertile ground. Gardening with native plants is that also, not only creating actual gardens which will continue to grow and change through time, but the planting and nurturing of a seed, of an idea. To me, this metaphor reveals that our gardens can be more than beautiful. They can also serve as recognition of the land, a sanctuary for all, and a place of hope. This season, as we create and spend time in our gardens, we can become more aware of the importance of biodiversity and the essential role native plants play. Plants native to this place, plants that will flourish in this place, and nurture in untold ways the many creatures, us included, who call this place home. Many scientists now consider us to be in a new time period, often referred to as the Anthropocene, a time defined by almost complete dominance of the human species. We have drastically changed every corner of the planet, and there is no going back. We can and urgently need to preserve and protect the few remaining wild places, restore wilderness where we can, but we will not return the old-growth forests and wetlands and prairies in so many places where we have built our homes, factories, and farms. I recently learned about Michael Rosenzweig, a professor of ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Arizona. In 2003, he wrote a book entitled Win-Win Ecology, in which he suggested that humans must increase biodiversity in human-dominated landscapes to create a win-win situation for both human use and native biodiversity. He called this idea reconciliation ecology. Here in Canada, we all know about truth and reconciliation and choosing a new way forward based on respect and acknowledgement of Indigenous knowledge, voices, and perspectives. I once attended a webinar where 4 Indigenous botanists and horticulturalists discussed the relationship with plants and the reverence and respect with which all plants were treated. If you're familiar with the writings of Robin Wall Kimmerer, you will know what I mean. It would benefit us to rediscover reverence and respect for the plants native to this place. One aspect these scientists discussed was plant names and how the Indigenous names would reflect the very nature of a plant. For example, Indigenous plant names would explain the plant's medicinal benefits, where the plant could be found, and so on. More recently, Doug Tallamy, an entomologist at the University of Delaware, urges us to bring nature home and inspires us to create welcoming, diverse spaces in our yards by including as many native plants in our gardens as we can. In this talk, I'm hoping to look at a way we can move forward so that each of us can not only be just observers or gardeners, but stewards of the earth, contributing and creating, in whatever way we can, spaces which are more biodiverse and beneficial for nature. If enough of us do that, in whatever way we can, we will be contributing to the health of our local ecosystems and indeed the health of the earth. Using Doug Tallamy's words again, if half of American lawns were replaced with native plants, we would create the equivalent of a 20 million acre park, 9 times bigger than Yellowstone and 100 times bigger than Shenandoah National Park. This is based on American statistics, but there is no reason to believe that they would be any less valid here. It is hopeful to know that people around the world are working on issues as disparate as where and how we get our energy, working to restore severely degraded factory sites, and saving forests, frogs, and pandas. I'm taking horticultural courses online through the University of Guelph, and there are people from Prince Edward Island to British Columbia in the Naturalizing and Restoring Landscapes class. We're having inspiring conversations on the subject by discussing what's going on in each of our communities. In this talk, I hope to pass on the lessons that my garden taught me and continues to teach me. I want to convey the hope for the future that this approach to caring for the earth brings. To quote Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan, "There are no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We are all crew." A lot of my childhood was spent exploring the many fields that used to surround our neighborhood. I particularly loved the wildflowers that grew there, but it wasn't until much later that I learned that these plants, the dandelions, chicory, vetch, and daisies, were not from here at all. My parents had a beautiful garden. The plants were mostly from faraway places in Europe and Asia. A lot of them needed protection from Canadian winters and insects, and maintaining the garden required weeding, edging, trimming, and fertilizing to conform to the standards of the day. I often looked upon tending the garden as an unenjoyable chore, an unpleasant necessity to finish as quickly as possible. Peter and I bought our home in Pointe-Claire in 1981. For the first 15 years or so, I gardened as I had learned, including edging, weeding, fertilizing, and spraying all manner of poisons. Then I met Carol, a new neighbor, educated in ecology and doing things very differently. The first native plant she gave me was a blue flag iris, Quebec's provincial flower as it was. I was hooked, and the garden began to transform. I started to understand the importance of biodiversity in a garden and the part that all creatures, from microorganisms to giant redwoods and elephants and, yes, even humans, play in the web of life. You might be able to remove a strand or two, but when too many parts are taken out, the web falls apart. My garden today is a bit of a mishmash of different ideas. I now think of it as a series of Eastern North American mini ecosystems, but it is still a place of ongoing informal experimentation. There are native plants placed together which you might never find coexisting in natural ecosystems, and other plants from a bit farther south who might help our pollinators, as this area is projected to become warmer and drier. You might also find exotic plant refugees who just needed a place to call home. My wish is for it to be a safe place with abundant food and shelter for all. So what are native plants and why are they so important? In North America, it often refers to plants which were present before Europeans arrived. More specifically, native plants are plants who have evolved and adapted to a specific location. Let me do that one again. Too technical here. More specifically, native plants are plants who have evolved and adapted to a specific location and have remained genetically unaltered by humans. A recent report on the status of wild species in Canada states that about 4% of wild species are at high risk of being wiped out in the wild. The biggest threats to these species include habitat loss, habitat degradation, and competition from non-invasive, non-native species. Planting native plants in our gardens doesn't just benefit the plants themselves, but also the various animals and insects who rely on them. Native animals and insects have spent thousands of years co-evolving with specific plants to survive. When one part of the equation is removed, the other will struggle to survive and may eventually disappear. Native plants also help filter pollutants from the watershed, help control erosion, and are adapted to our climate, pests, and diseases. Native plants can provide food in the form of seeds and insects, as well as shelter for wildlife. Native plants generally have deeper roots than non-natives, which can help them survive in drier conditions and prevent soil erosion and compaction. One example of this is the compass plant, generally referred to around our house as the beast, on account of her great height. She is one of the plants that had anchored the great tall grass prairies. When Pointe-Claire redid our street in 2019, we removed all the plants we could, but there was no way we could take her out. As the city diggers went down deeper and deeper, we could glimpse the depth of her taproot, which can go down as deep as 15 feet. Pollinators love her, bees fall asleep in her flowers, and in the fall, squirrels run up the stalks to get seeds. One advantage of having deep roots is that most of these plants can find their own water and nutrients deep in the soil. This photo was taken last August after one of the driest summers I can remember, and we did not need to water the garden once. Well-established native plant gardens do not need to be watered and do not need to be fertilized. This is in a meadow setting, but there are other native plants who will thrive in water gardens at the end of an eaves trough downspout. Another very important reason to plant native plants is that the insect-plant interactions are some of the most important strands in the web of life. And many insects are specialists, meaning that they only reproduce on very specific plants. Certain bees are pollen specialists, only able to use pollen from very specific plants. Probably one of the best-known examples of insect specialization is the monarch butterfly, but there are many, many other species, while not quite so photogenic, still rely on a single type of plant to reproduce. At this point, you're probably wondering, who are these amazing plant creatures and where do I find them? But first, we must talk about our lawns. I had a lawn. I still have a little one. You probably have a lawn. Most people in suburbs around the world have a lawn. Sometimes we need grassy places to play sports, for kids to play on, and dogs to run. But a lot of the time it is the default landscape, and the land could be put to better ecological use. So how did lawns come to be so ubiquitous? The concept originated in Europe in the 17th and 18th century as a symbol of wealth and status. Think of British castles and manor houses or the gardens at Versailles. Large estates and mansions would feature expansive, carefully manicured lawns. The idea was that these lush expanses of grass reflected the owner's prosperity. As European colonizers spread across the globe, they brought this concept with them. In North America, for instance, the wealthy elite adopted lawn culture as a status symbol, emulating their British counterparts. By the mid-19th century, lawns had become an integral part of suburban landscapes, particularly in the United States. This phenomenon was further fueled by industrialization and mass production of grass seed, making it easier for ordinary people to create these green spaces. Scientific developments made that during the Second World War led to the creation of fertilizers and herbicides to assist in the creation of the perfect lawn. The rise of lawn culture worldwide is not just about aesthetics. It also reflected changing social norms. Lawns became a marker of respectability, with well-manicured lawns indicating a family's adherence to middle-class values. Not that one, that was in the middle of a desert, but I like the contrast. The cultural phenomena has persisted, contributing significantly to environmental degradation and resource consumption today. About 25 or 30 years ago, I began to question why I gardened the way I did, and if there was an alternative. Gradually, bits of the lawn began to disappear, to be replaced by flowers ground from family, friends, and neighbors. I didn't really know anything about my plant's origins, other than the peonies were from Ma's garden, or over there were Uncle Tommy's violets. That changed in the early 90s during a visit to the Booktique, a secondhand bookstore that used to be on Donegal. I don't know if anybody remembers that store. It's a nice secondhand bookstore. At about the same time that I had my encounter with my neighbor, I discovered a book by Harry R. Phillips, published in 1985, about growing and propagating wildflowers. I also started to consider the processes at work in nature and realized that I needed to see the garden with new eyes. I'd always thought that my gardens had to look like gardens that appeared in magazines or on TV shows or at Disneyland. Aside from a need to control nature, I think I was fearful of what people would think, or that my lawn might look like this. But what is really happening in this photo? Today, I would say, the earth is healing. The real story, as with so many things in nature, is happening out of sight. The fairy ring of mushrooms and the dandelion flowers are just the tip of the iceberg. Below ground, the mushroom's mycelium are breaking down the roots of a felled tree into food for other plants and organisms, while the dandelion roots are bringing nutrients up to the earth's surface. I'm not suggesting we need lawns comprised of mushrooms and dandelions. There are many beautiful ways we can help the earth heal. As I show you the plants that can help us, try to envision where in your surroundings you can incorporate them. Cedar Park United has already initiated some wonderful projects, and Kyra will talk later about how Pointe-Claire is helping citizens transition to more sustainable garden practices. I will also give you a few suggestions on how to create wildflower gardens. But for now, let's get to the stars of the show. Finally, it's spring. The Habs are in the playoffs, and here we are. I'll go fast. But the forest is the real place to be. The native flowers at this time of year are mostly in the woods and referred to as spring ephemerals. They come up early before the trees leaf out to take advantage of the sun, and then some completely disappear until next spring. I'm sure you've all heard about trilliums. That was them in the last photo. We practiced this, Peter. Okay. But how about, go back one, Peter. Thank you. Foam flowers, trout lilies are coming. Really, we worked on this. Trout lilies, bloodroot, and Dutchman's breeches. The value of these plants to pollinators early in the season is immeasurable. Some species of bumblebees actually choose their nesting sites based on the densities and populations of surrounding ephemerals. Dutchman's breeches are pollinated solely by bumblebees, whose long proboscises can reach the nectar in the flower, and the trout lily minor bee feeds almost exclusively on the early nectar of trout lily blossoms. Later, there are so many plants that I will have to confine myself to just a few characters in my garden. I like to think of the garden as a mosaic of microhabitats. Keep that in mind as you consider what possibilities you have for creating wildlife habitat. You have now met my woodland, so let's move on to a wetter place around the pond. As garden photos go, this isn't very appealing. The point was that this is my size 10 gardening clog that I'm using for size comparison. If you look closely, just to the left of my clog, there's a tiny plant there, and it's a baby jewelweed. Trust me when I say that it is a most interesting plant. It is one of the very few native plants which are annuals. That is, each plant must start from a seed every year. If you walk through Terracotta, you might have seen them along the creeks in July and August, at which point they've grown significantly. That's the same plant in 1 year. For reference, I'm about 5'7" with very long arms. Among their many talents, the tiny orange flowers of the jewelweeds are so attractive to hummingbirds that one of their alternate names is hummingbird tree. Another name is spotted touch-me-not. Children and adults, truth be told, this adult anyway, can play a game where the goal is to touch the seed pod without making it explode. And they explode very easily when they're touched. These are Canada lilies. They're also wetland lovers and coincidentally bloom just in time for Canada Day. These are among my favorite flowers. They're cardinal flowers, and they are a perfect example of coevolution. Like the jewelweeds and Canada lilies, they prefer damp spots, and like them, they attract hummingbirds. In the American Northeast, ruby-throated hummingbirds are the only pollinator of cardinal flowers. The male reproductive part is where you see the white dot on the flower. Later, that changes to the female part, starting with the flowers at the bottom of the stem and progressing up. As the hummingbird pushes its beak into the flower to reach the nectar, the anther releases pollen onto its head, which, as the hummer moves up and down the flower stalks, is deposited on the female receptor of another flower lower down on the stem. I was once mistaken for a cardinal flower. I was kneeling in the garden wearing my McGill swim team t-shirt from 1975. I still have it. It doesn't fit quite the same way, though. When I heard a sound, it was like a Star Wars lightsaber close to my head. I turned to see a female hummingbird hovering in place only centimeters from my head. I kid you not. She proceeded to give me a severe scolding for not being a flower in her garden. As any good Canadian would, I apologized, and she left, head held high. Perhaps the king of all insect specialization, or at least the most well-known, is the monarch butterfly, seen here on the flower of our native buttonbush. Take a good look at the buttonbush flower, that round ball. During COVID, a friend of mine remarked that the buttonbush flower looked eerily similar to the visual representation of the virus. And I think she's right if you look close. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but as you probably know, all monarch caterpillars can only survive on milkweed plants. They start life as a tiny caterpillar hatched from an egg laid by their mother on the underside of a milkweed leaf, one egg at a time. The caterpillars grow through 5 sheddings to arrive at this size. They then develop into chrysalises to complete their last part of their development. In this short video, there's a developing chrysalis on the left, the green. It has little bits of gold on the top, which I don't think you can see from this photo. And the one in the middle, the one that's gone black, and you can almost see the butterfly inside, is about to emerge.
Oh yeah, it's coming.
My daughter and son-in-law took this video one July morning when they heard a crack of the chrysalis breaking open. The emerged butterfly has only a couple of minutes to pump the fluid from her abdomen into her wings and fuse the 2 sides of her proboscis together. She will then drip dry for several hours before being released. Now this takes a couple of minutes. She comes out head first, and her front, what are the front? They're not claws. On a legs? No, not the antennas are out, but then the legs. We'll call them legs. There's probably an official word. If anybody knows it, tell me. Grab onto ridges at the top of the chrysalis. She's almost there. Her legs are out. She comes out head first. Come on, you can do it. This never gets old, by the way. Come on. Boom. Now she only has a few minutes to get her wings out and her wings pumped out, and she needs to hang there so her wings can dry straight. She also has her proboscis like a straw, and she has 2 flaps on the side of her mouth. That's not good for the microphone. That she uses to put the proboscis together. She's exactly equal on both sides, and she's got one side of the straw on either side, and they have to go together within the first minute. She'll hang there for a while. So the excitement's over, folks. We'll move on. The 3 species of milkweed native to our area are common milkweed, which is on the top right, swamp milkweed at the left with the monarch caterpillar on it, and butterfly weed, which has a Canada tiger swallowtail butterfly on it. They're all beautiful. The one that we probably see most often is the common milkweed that was in the top right, but it's probably not a great one for the garden. It can be quite aggressive. Here are a couple of other insects who come to the plants in the garden. This is a giant swallowtail butterfly. I first noticed them about 10 years ago laying eggs on the rue in the herb garden. From the people at the insectarium, I learned that they've been coming and overwintering here since 2012. And they lay their eggs on members of the citrus family, which is weird because I never thought we had members of the citrus family here. Apparently we do. The rue grows here. Rue is a European herb. But also there are 2 small trees native to eastern Canada, the prickly ash and the hop tree. Now they don't give you fruit like a lemon or a lime, but they are in the same family and they will feed on them. You're ahead of me here. One sec. Another specialist I saw in the garden for the very first time last summer was the primrose moth. She lays her eggs on her native evening primrose, seen on the right, the flowers on the right. The flowers of the evening primrose open at dusk, and in the morning the moth places herself headfirst in the flower as the petals close around her, thus hiding her from predators. An important feature of native plants is that they usually offer more than one ecological benefit. The evening primrose, which supplied food and shelter for the moth in the summer, provides seed in the fall for small birds like this goldfinch. I want to mention that honeybees are not native to North America. You may or may not know that. There are approximately 800 species of bees that are native to Canada who are excellent pollinators, and many of them are specialists who rely on native plants and appropriate habitat in the ground or on logs to survive. On Easter Sunday, we were driving home from Ottawa. We turned on the CBC. Coincidentally, the show was on the importance of native plants. One of the guests mentioned that honeybees were often used for pollination on farms and orchards, but that most of the ones in Canada are imported from the States, leading to the issue of tariffs and availability. The host, Laura Lynch, commented that she had not expected to talk about tariffs, but they both agreed that it was a good idea to support homegrown Canadian bees by increasing their habitat and the number of native plants they rely on. So, buy Canadian, I guess, even bees. I talked about the wetland and the forest, but what most of us think of when we say wildflowers are the flowers we see in meadows. It is also the type of setting we can most easily copy in our gardens. The plants of the North American meadow are tough, resilient creatures who can survive in a variety of conditions. We may not be able to recreate the specific prairie or meadow exactly, but we can, using these plants, create novel ecosystems and climate change-defying gardens, which will be beautiful to humans and supply food and habitat for the other species who share our space. Here's what's going on in my meadow garden from spring to fall. This is a skunk cabbage. It likes wet areas and is not really suited to a typical garden, but I really want to show it to you. It is related to the peace lily that some of us might grow as houseplants, and it comes out in early March by creating its own heat. So much so that it can sometimes melt snow. Small pollinator insects are attracted by the heat and go inside the flower where they pollinate the plant. This is happening in early March. Then the leaves grow out and it covers it for the summer. In the garden, in early spring, there are wild and domesticated strawberries, barren strawberries, and violets. They form a tapestry of purple, yellow, and white flowers in late May and late April and early May. They're a little late this year, I think. These plants form a ground cover or a living mulch, which will protect and nourish the ground while feeding insects, birds, and small mammals, as well as the occasional stray human who picks up a strawberry. This is a columbine. There is an old legend that says you can expect the hummingbirds to return when the columbine blooms. The nectar provides an important source of energy when few other plants are in flower. This is a golden Alexander, an exceptional early season nectar source for bees and butterflies, and a host plant for black swallowtail butterflies. It's right there. I think Kyra has some of those seeds if you're interested. We'll talk about seeds, and Kyra has some seed packets later. Apparently, spiderworts, that's a spiderwort, are so named because their long leaves curve around to resemble spider legs. Bumblebees are their primary pollinator. Foxglove beard tongue has sturdy stems. This is not the European foxglove, it just looks like it. So foxglove beard tongue, sturdy stems, tubular flowers that attract many bees and the hummingbirds. It's a larval host for both mason bees and the pollen-collecting wasp. This is a great blue lobelia. Again, in our yard, it likes to hang out in damp to wet places. It's related to the cardinal flower, the red one we looked at before. Although bumblebees are the most frequent visitors and the main pollinators, I have noticed the hummingbirds will also come for a drink. The white flowers of the pearly everlasting are indeed very long-lasting. They last for over a month in the garden. And they're a host for the American painted lady butterfly on the right. This is a blazing star, again, another good source of nectar for migrating monarchs in late summer, and looks like a bee tower when the bumblebees discover it in bloom. This one is star anise. It's fantastic for pollinators, and you can use the leaves. They're edible, and you can use them in salads or for teas. It's kind of a licorice flavor, a little bit of a licorice flavor. Of course, you probably know this one. You probably have some of this one. It's a purple coneflower. It's a superstar for pollinators, and I leave the seed heads up over the winter to watch the goldfinches feed on them. A word of warning, though. If you go plant shopping in a traditional nursery, you'll find many different types of echinacea. It is important to get the type that you would find in the wild. When plants are changed to appeal to humans, they might not be recognizable to animals. Changes in color or shape are particularly hazardous. The production of cultivars is particularly rampant with echinaceas, but it occurs with other native plants as well. They're sometimes called neighbours instead of cultivars. The giveaway is a fancy name after the Latin name. For example, the purple coneflower is Echinacea purpurea, but if you see Echinacea purpurea bravado or Echinacea purpurea sombrero, that's going to be a cultivar. And they make them in, it's actually kind of admirable because they make them in all kinds of different colors. There was once a Montreal echinacea for the, I think, 375th anniversary, and it would change color throughout the summer. It was very cool, except that it didn't live very long, at least not in my garden, and I haven't seen it anywhere else or for sale recently, so I don't think it was a resounding success. Anyway, the purple one's the one you want. Most of you already probably have some black-eyed Susans in your garden. Again, an excellent source of food for both pollinator insects and overwintering birds. This one, Kyra also has some seeds of this one if you're interested. It's wild bergamot, and it's probably one of the easiest wildflowers to grow, with beautiful purple blooms lasting from mid to late summer. The leaves and flowers have a sweet fragrance, are edible, and very attractive to a variety of butterflies. Peter's asleep. He's watching the game, isn't he? Peter, thank you. This is scarlet bee balm. One aspect of native plants which I find interesting is how they were used by indigenous people for food and medicine. Bee balm is a natural source of the antiseptic thymol, and it has long been used by various people as an antiseptic and an herbal tea for mouth infections. Hummers love them for their bright red flowers. This is Joe Pye, and I think that's a giant swallowtail on the one on the left. A famous story claims that Joe Pye was a 17th century herbalist, but later research believes him to be a Mohican leader. Joe Pye the plant is a tall, shrubby, quick-growing perennial requiring little maintenance, and he has dusty rose-colored flowers on tall, strong stems which lasts for several weeks in the summer. The blooms attract dozens of butterfly species. Some plants are what are termed keystone species. That is, a plant that is used by many animals and insects. Goldenrod is one of those plants. It is a host for over 100 species of caterpillars and provides vital late summer nectar for native wasps, bees, and migrating butterflies. It also supports 42 pollen specialist bee species that rely only on goldenrod for food, and it supplies seed for birds in the winter. It's quite a lot to expect from any plant. There are many different species of asters, and when they're in bloom, they are covered in bees. This is a New England aster and is an essential component of native plant gardens in the fall. The transition to gardening for biodiversity is not a fad. It is a movement towards sustainability predicated on the need for solutions to the environmental crisis we are now experiencing. It incorporates ways to support wildlife, protect species at risk, conserve water, and avoid damage to lakes and rivers. Around the world, gardeners, designers, and municipalities are realizing the benefits this movement can bring. Two of the best-known examples are in New York City, located in the most improbable locations. This is the High Line. It's an abandoned, elevated railway through the heart of New York. The gardens here were designed by famed garden designer Piet Oudolph, using mostly native plants. This photo shows a section in spring with native red buds in bloom. This is a partial photo of Brooklyn Bridge Park, an 85-acre park on the Brooklyn side of the East River that was formerly an industrial stretch of waterfront. There's a patchwork of gardens and ecosystems, including woodlands, meadows, freshwater marshes, and saltwater marshes, all performing critical functions for patrons and wildlife alike. There's already a beautiful garden with many native plants in front of the church, that-a-way. Bravo, and keep going. You may even be thinking about adding some of your gardens Take two. You may be thinking about adding some to your gardens at home or creating new gardens. Remember to think big, start small. Tending the earth is something we can all do, and it must be a joyous time, not a laborious chore. We don't have to construct a woodland or a freshwater marsh to be of benefit to nature and wildlife. We can start where we are. Add native plants to your existing garden. I'm sure you probably have some there already. In her garden, ecological garden designer Rebecca McMacken started by observing what was in her turf grass. She then gradually added other natives without taking out the grass. The plants know what to do, and they will spread. In Pointe-Claire, I've noticed asters, daisy fleabane, and evening primroses appearing spontaneously in the lawn. You could also start with native plant seeds. Kyra has some packages of wild bergamot, not sneezeweed. What are we talking about? Helen's, it's a sunflower. It's a perennial sunflower. And both of us keep forgetting which one it is. It's a very nice plant, though. Okay, so we've got that and golden Alexanders to give out to you. A word of warning, seeds might require patience. Some require a period of cold before germinating, and like humans, most go through a baby phase where they will need to be cared for. That being said, though, I've a cleared area in my backyard where I've just been throwing seeds over several years. When I had extras, I'd just throw them in there. And it's developed quite a nice selection of mature plants. So it can be done. You just keep an area clear and throw in some seeds and watch what happens. Seeds can be an inexpensive way to increase the amount of biodiversity in your garden, and sometimes it is the only way to get certain plants, as traditional nurseries often don't carry a huge selection of native plants. We can talk more about that during our question period afterwards. As well as having native plants in a meadow, you can also put them in more traditional garden settings. Here are a few ideas. Border gardens are a great place to add natives. Notice how the plants fill in the space and touch each other, helping to conserve moisture and discourage unwanted plants. A foundation planting is another good idea for plants that perhaps prefer drier situations. Again, look at the wood chips used as mulch to help them with moisture loss and weed suppression. Wood chips, grass clippings, and leaves all work well as mulch. These all decay, improving the nutritional value and texture of the soil. Try some water-loving plants around a bird bath. Start with a small area and expand later if you want. You could add just a walkway with native plants. The summer and fall blooming ones don't mind getting trimmed in mid-June, so they will be lower and not obstruct pathways. I have a neighbor who is an excellent gardener, and she does this exact thing with black-eyed Susans. You can keep some of your grass as the pathway. This is one I wish I'd done because right now I'm resorting to dragging in wood chips every couple of years, but I wish I'd kept the grass as a pathway. Keep that in mind if you do something like this. Use a narrow band of native plants along a retaining wall. The possibilities are limited only by your imagination. Or opt to go completely wild, but don't forget to make a pathway for you to observe all the wonderful events and creatures your garden has to offer. You might also want to consider including signs in a native garden. Signs can help inform and educate passers-by. The two that you see here are from the Canadian Wildlife Federation and Monarch Watch. I also have some laminated ones from the City of Pointe-Claire, and I often see people check them out when passing. You can buy them from different organizations, but some websites have signs available for free that you can print and laminate. Communities throughout Canada and around the world are starting to recognize the importance of encouraging citizens to develop more sustainable and biodiverse gardens and gardening practices. I will pause here for a moment to let Kyra Pompeo talk about her work. Kyra is the junior manager of Pointe-Claire's Environmental Transition and Sustainable Development Department and has, with manager Alison Surveyor, created information sheets on why and how to transition to a more biodiverse style of gardening.
So as Kim has been mentioning throughout her presentation, the City of Pointe-Claire has been putting in a lot of work into creating what we call our ecological garden guide. So I'm going to be presenting a bit on that today. So a bit of context, why we decided to promote ecological gardening in Pointe-Claire. We noticed in Pointe-Claire, in the City of Pointe-Claire, there's a public commitment to gardening, and our residents are very passionate about this. We have our Pointe-Claire Horticulture Society. We have a lot of residents like Kim who are very passionate about gardening. So that was one thing we noticed. We also noticed that there is social acceptability challenges for these natural gardens, as they're often deemed unkempt lawns and not what they actually are, which is natural gardens, and they are very important for our environment. So we noticed these two things, and we thought it'd be great to accompany the residents, the citizens, in a transition to naturalizing their lawns. So that's where we decided to create these ecological garden guides, and this project began in 2024. It's been an interdepartmental collaboration between Public Works, so with our horticulture department, helping pick the plant species per garden. We've been working with engineering on the landscaping of, we have like these schematic pictures on the guides, which I'll show in a second, with our communications department to help the content of it, and sustainable development is me and my manager. We've been kind of creating the whole guide itself. And our goal was to provide guidance and support to citizens, ensuring coherence and alignment with our regulations. So the current guides on our website are the Pollinator Garden Guide and the Ecological Garden Benefits and Misconceptions. So this is just a screenshot of what we have on our website so far. There will be more to come, but these are the current ones we have. And I'll just show in the next slide what they look like, these guides. Yeah, so this is what we call our 101 ecological gardening guide. So it's benefits and misconceptions of ecological gardens. It gives a definition. It shows a picture of what you would consider an ecological garden versus like an unkept property. It tells you the advantages of having this, how to manage perceptions of the public in terms of ecological gardens. This is more of a general guide, and the next one will show the, on the next slide. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so this is a more specific guide. It's called a Pollinator Garden Guide, and there are steps. I have copies of these to hand out to everyone if anyone's interested. So yeah, there's the steps to create these guides, step-by-step instructions. And then on the right side, there's a schematic which shows like all the plant species that you can plant and we have a legend of all these plants and how big they grow. So it gives residents a good idea of how to actually do this on their own property without feeling like completely lost, because it is a big endeavor to embark on. And then on the left side of the guide, which is the front page, it shows how tall the plants grow in comparison to an average-sized human. So it also gives residents a good idea of what their garden could look like. So it's a very comprehensive one-pager guide that we wanted to make very concise, but also very informative. It's a lot of information on one page, but there's lots to know for these kind of gardening. So go to the next slide. Yeah. So far we've done quite a bit of promotion for our guides. We've done environmental kiosks at various Pointe-Claire events. On the left, that was my supervisor and I at Public Works Day last year. And then on the right, we did a couple of pop-up kiosks in Pointe-Claire Village throughout the summer, and Kim was there with us to help promote these guides. Go to the next. We've also been doing presentations in elementary schools, teaching students grade 3 to 6, I would say, so far, but we're trying to target other grades as well, teaching them about best practices in terms of biodiversity and just exposing them to this concept at a young age. They are the next generation of people that are going to make a difference in the world, so it's good to expose them to these good practices at a young age. And then we'll go to the next. And yes, as Kim has been mentioning as well, we've been giving out native plant seeds. So I have some to give out to anyone who's interested. She was explaining the species that we have. They're specifically for pollinator gardens, I think, but I mean they're good for any type of garden. And on our website, we give like sort of technical information, like how much sun it needs, the type of soil. So yeah, there's lots of stuff on our website regarding that, and the right is just a picture of the actual seed package with a QR code, which goes to our website as well, but I'll hand them out later for you guys. And we've been receiving some good feedback on it. We were featured in the Gazette. My supervisor was interviewed, and she was promoting our guide, so it's been something that's been featured on different articles as well. So what's upcoming in 2026? We have 3 new guides that will be launched very soon. We have our meadow garden guide, our food forest garden, our ecological lawns, and these are all going to be guides similar to the one I just showed with the pollinator garden. And it's just to show residents that that there's lots of different ways they can, try this ecological gardening. It doesn't have to be one specific type of garden. They can try any one of these gardens and see what works, what they like. For example, the food forest one is very interesting because it produces comestible fruits and vegetables, which people often like, not just for humans, but for animals and insects. So people often enjoy that. We'll be continuing to distribute native plants and seeds at our events. So we had Earth Day last week, and Public Works Day is going to be the next event we have, end of May. Oh, could you just go back, Peter? I think there's just one more. Could you just go back one slide? Yeah, so just Public Works Day, Earth Day, Pointe-Claire Days, and others. And we're just gonna be doing campaigning all summer to be promoting these guides and handing out stuff to residents like the seeds and the plants. So there's lots to be on the lookout for. And then you can go to the next slide. This was our Earth Day event. We were trying to promote it before the event, but it's passed now. So our next event would be Public Works Day on the 23rd of May. So that's good, perfect.
Before I go on, just to expand on something Kyra was saying, it doesn't have to be, we're not trying to necessarily pigeonhole different types of gardens. They can blend from one to the other, and a lot of these plants, especially the ones that Kyra has here today, will fill in many functions in many different types of gardens. So we don't have to say, oh, that can't go there because, a lot of the plants will fill in different functions, and there can be some crossover in these different types of gardens. It's just really a framework to start with. In his book, The Omnivore's Dilemma, Michael Pollan coined a phrase which captured the essence of healthy eating. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. Perhaps a gardener's equivalent might be plant plants, lots and lots, mostly natives. Biologist and author Robin Wall Kimmerer would have us think of a garden filled with abundance and generosity, a feast for its occupants, human and otherwise. Biophilia is a term that was first used by naturalist E.O. Wilson to describe an innate, biologically embedded human need to connect with nature and other living organisms. This innate feeling is one that has developed over thousands of years as we rely on nature for our very survival. As our communities become more urban and we rely more on technology, we risk losing contact with the world we have evolved in. Each successive generation risks losing its relationship with the natural world without even realizing what is being lost. Studies show that time spent in nature can increase both mental and physical health and encourages social well-being. Reconnecting with the natural world not only helps us, but the earth itself. In our gardens, we can't save rhinos or pandas, but we can save bees, butterflies, and more. In his book, The Sunflower Garden, William Jordan says, ultimately, the future of a natural ecosystem depends not on protection from humans, but on its relationship with the people who inhabit it or share the landscape with it. Wendell Berry's poem, It Is Hard to Have Hope, asks us to be still and listen to the voices that belong to the stream banks and the trees and the open fields. There are songs and sayings that belong to this place, which it speaks for itself and no other. Found your hope then on the ground under your feet. And to give the last word to Douglas Tallamay, because life is fueled by energy captured from the sun by plants, it will be the plants that we use in our gardens that determine what nature will be like 10, 20, and 50 years from now. Thank you. Thank you. If anybody wants to talk or ask about anything. You're
Oh, okay. Oh, now it's on. Okay. Okay, I'll take, is this in? Hi, okay. Thank you so much, Kim and Kyra. That was beautiful. Do we have any questions for them? And I'll bring over the microphone. Okay.
Yeah, maybe we could.
Just so much of what you showed looked beautiful, like meadow gardens. If you've got a full shade backyard where even hostas are struggling, what would you suggest you can put there to?
You put a manure soil to make it more moisture, because if the hostas are struggling, it might be because they're not getting enough water. It's probably dry too, or is it wet?
No, it's like harder. Yeah.
It's hard.
Like a clay.
Oh, you're in Pointe-Claire then? Yes, welcome. It's legendary. Yeah, it just. Okay, have you tried, like, what I did in what I call my woodland garden is I've used, and it took a couple of years, but lots of leaves and lots of grass clippings and a bit of wood chips, and just waited and waited. And it'll happen. Now I can go in there and just grab the soil like that. So it takes a little bit of time, or you can try raising it a bit if you want to rush it along. Yeah, and what you'll be able to, yeah, with regular soil or whatever you can find. But the best way is, my neighbor started that. She was the one I was talking about. She was the one I was walking home one day, and she was putting newspapers down on the front lawn. And this is at the time I was, doing all this fancy gardening. And yeah, I thought she would, but it worked. Yeah, a little turn and turn that. And there are lots of species of native plants. Like I talked about the goldenrods, and you usually see them in big meadows, spreading. But there are many different species of goldenrods, and you can find some that'll work in the shade. And some of them, like they're very high, a lot will grow in many different places. There's, I just rediscovered my native geranium maculatum. I thought I'd lost it. Every year I keep saying I'm going to make notes, and then I forget to make notes, and then I have to go looking for the plants again. Anyway, but they'll go in. So there are plants. It's just, I think it's.
And what about if like grass doesn't grow, and then you try clover and clover doesn't grow? We just have sort of bits of moss.
That's kind of beautiful.
But the moss is lovely, but if you just got nothing, like
Yeah.
is there something I can throw? I reckon it would maybe time.
Well, time like sun. I've had trouble. I tried to put it between the bricks. I had this beautiful image in my. It all starts with beautiful images in my head, and then ends with something completely different. There's some. Clover needs sun too. Yeah. If you look up lawn alternatives, there's probably something you need grass in that area, like a grass type thing. You need a cover. But you want to walk, this is an area you want to walk on. Yeah, you need something low. I'd have to think about that. But you could do a search because there are a lot of now grass mixes like Kyra. Actually, Kyra, where are you? There's a new ecological lawns coming in.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm not sure the species that are shade tolerant.
Because there's a mix of different plants that can go in there, the native plants. And a lot of the native plants, you can actually just mow over them,
Yeah.
and they'll still come back. I noticed even primrose, I talked about the mois. It's usually about this tall, and has a lot of seeds. But my neighbor had kept mowing, so sometime in September, I'm walking beside her lawn, and I noticed this flower, but this high, bright yellow. I said, that's an evening primrose. It's supposed to be this tall, right down on the ground. So there are a lot of plants, native plants, that'll go there. It's just finding the right. Sometimes it takes experimentation. Yeah. Good luck. You can come over. Anybody actually can come over and visit the garden. Peter will make you banana bread if you tell me in advance. And that's good. Yeah, it's good, eh? And we can talk about it because it's an interesting problem. I mean, like we said, you need places for kids to play, dogs to run around too, so it can't all be just garden. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What kind of trees is it under? Oh, like a Norway maple or Manitoba?
Yeah.
Manitoba, yeah. One of those, eh? Yeah. Oh. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So but something will grow there. Yeah, amend the soil, leave the leaves down, and yeah. You're welcome to come over and see. I'm just up on the hill. So.
Any other questions?
Thank you so much for coming.
Oh, one more question.
So we have lots of grass in front of our house and a really nice garden bed that a previous owner made. If you want to get rid of some of the grass, where do we start?
There's a few ways you can do it. You can just okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about, I'm sorry everybody online. I'm used to yelling. Yeah, there's lots of ways you can do it. Some people just interplant native plants in the grass. Just come out a bit from your garden. Do it gradually. Don't do anything like, for everybody's information, and just because of personal experience, don't have someone come and dump a whole truckload of wood chips on your lawn all at the same time, because then you're forced to work very hard to plant a garden. I did that. Do it gradually. It's always the best way. But you could start with that. Or in the fall, put down a layer of, I don't know, do we make newspapers anymore? Newspapers. Or one of the best things is the leaf bags. The leaf bags, yes. And then just leave the leaves on top of that. And that will get rid of the grass. And it rots. And that's one way. And then you can plant plants in. Yeah. Snow on.
With the green leaves with the white edges.
Yeah.
And it's so invasive, it'll grow anywhere.
Yeah.
It'll grow anywhere.
Snow on the mountain.
That's
yeah.
its nickname. I don't remember what the other name
I think my mother had that in her rock garden. Is that possible? It grows. Yeah, and it's perennial. It comes back every year.
Yeah, and it has little roots that go out and other plants.
Oh, yeah.
It's that type. And I have Lichomania, the one
Oh,
with
the
the white.
yellow one?
No,
Oh, no.
I've got got one with a white, like a goose head, and it's got the most.
Loose leaf, no, goose
I
leaf.
think it's called. Yeah, it's a gooseneck. No, no, it's not.
No, it's not that, it's something
No,
else.
it's something else, and it's invasive, and it's got the most beautiful little star-shaped flowers, tiny, and they keep going out on this
Oh.
flower head. I probably have a picture on my phone.
I,
I run around taking pictures of all my plants.
I think one of the best ways when you have is to start planting some natives around them. Digging is always a possibility, but sometimes that's hard. Persistent cutting down of them will just tire them out sometimes. And you can, I had goutweed. I'll have goutweed there for the rest of my life, but I just keep digging it up little bits and it gets gradually less. You can also do what we were talking about with the grass as well. Try that. If you cut it down low, then smother it is one way. It's not easy. And it's so sad because, sorry?
It's digging out this gooseneck one because it's invading all the perennials.
Just keep kind of down, because it's very hard to dig out. Yeah, that's a hard job, I don't. It's hard to be joyous in the garden, like.
I just wondered, could you tell us a story about your biggest surprise in your garden, or one of the biggest surprises over the years?
The hummingbird was probably one. The hummingbird was probably a biggest surprise. Peter, what was our biggest surprise in the garden? Actually, all the time is a big surprise for Peter. I go out and do something and he goes, oh no. Sometimes it's the plants that just show up, the volunteers. There's the evening primrose. I didn't buy it. It just came one day, and it was at the same time Catherine had very dry skin. Catherine's my older daughter. She had very dry skin. And so,
every year, we would make a bet on when the first Canada Day lily would come
okay,
out.
I've got the microphone. Yeah, they can't hear you. I like this situation. Okay, what he's talking about is our Canada lilies. I think you saw some of them. They're the orange ones. I also do plant impressions for parties if you like. Anyway, they really like that. And so when they come out, their petals just flip up one at a time like that. So we would often make serious bets on which plant was going to be completely bloomed before the others. The surprise, it's the animals often. One day I was gardening, and just behind my back, the 2 raccoons came up, and as if I wasn't there, it's like they get used to me and they just think, well, it is their garden, right? And so, oh no, the carpenter bee. Is that what? Okay, then I'll stop. I promise. You may flee. I won't take it personally if you need to leave. Does anybody have a score? Speaking of leaving. 0-0 after the first period. Oh, okay. That's better than bad news. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Okay, so I'm out in the garden one day, and I'm watching this beautiful bumblebee on the Agastache funiculum, which is, I'll think of the regular name. It's a tall purple flower. And this bee, cue the music, da 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 da, beautiful. And I'm sitting there watching it. And all of a sudden, this little bee comes, wraps its legs around the bumblebee, pulls it off. I'm going, no, don't. They don't listen to me anyway, so I don't know why I bother. Anyway, the bumblebee was very calm, just left. And I wanted to find out what that bee was. It turns out it's, I think it was a carpenter bee. No, I know it was a carpenter bee. And it's a male. The males patrol the area. I watched him after that, and he had about a 4 meter by 4 meter, would you say, perimeter. And he would patrol it, just like, an army guard would walk like this. And he did that all summer. And then later in the year, his kids came out and they did the same thing. Only the male bees. The female bees are back at home, I guess. I don't know. I guess they have the same problems we do. No, the bumblebee left. They're very peaceful. If you find one, especially late in the season, and they get cold, they might stay on the ground. So you pick them up and walk into a sunny plot, and they'll take off. Oh, okay, one more bumblebee story. I came out one morning, And these are my favorite stories. I'm sure you guys have some too, wonderful ones of the animals in your gardens. The bumblebees, I came out and there was on the sedum. Now sedum's not a native, but it's quite good for pollinators. You probably have some sedum, yeah. And I came out and there's about 20 bumblebees, not the big queen, but bumblebees, asleep. Well, I didn't know that at the time. I thought I'd killed them on top of the sedum. And I just stood there and watched. I know I need to get a life, don't I? Anyway, I watched them. And as the sun came up and it got warmer, they pendiculated, they stretched. And I don't know if they yawned, but then they tested their wings and off they went. That was kind of a fun morning too. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm glad I'm not a crazy. Yeah.
Leafcutter bees.
Oh, tell us about it.
Well, I was out in the garden and I have some wild rose bushes. And I kept seeing these chunks out of the leaves, so I stood there and along came a bee and he chomped around and he flew off with a piece of the leaf. And so I looked him up and he's a leafcutter bee.
And do they use their leaves, that was startling. Do they use their leaves to block when they lay their eggs and block? I think that might be what they do, but yeah, it's very cool. Yeah, I'll look it up too. It's very cool. Yeah, I've seen the results of that. I don't think I've ever caught anybody in the act, but I've seen all the scissors. Yeah. I've seen their results. Yeah. I want to see your leafcutter bee. Yeah. Anyway, thank you again. Oh, yeah, sure. There you go.
Yeah, so that's a good point. I forgot to mention it. We had leftover milkweed plants from Earth Day. So they're at City Hall at like the front, as soon as you walk in, just to the left, like the multi-service counter. Yeah, go like as soon as possible because it's kind of just like as first come, first serve. No, so Monday 8 a.m. Yeah, I think there was like 50 left when I dropped them off at the end of the week, so there should be some, I would say, yes. Yeah.
So I just want to thank again Kim and Kyra, and I guess that would be like the end of the presentation tonight, and you can stay and get some seeds. So thank you everybody, and don't forget to join us for the rest of May for Nature Connections. Bye.